Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. We are at the end of February already, so it is now time for an update of my MVP race to the end of the month for 25-26. Things are starting to hot up, things are starting to tighten up, and there are a few contenders who may have been there previously that have fallen out, some others who have rejoined the group, and others who certainly won't be able to contend for the rest of the year because they are ineligible. There were some honourable mentions that will drop out now that certainly aren't eligible. Some other guys previously that they're probably going to get enough wins eventually when they come back under their belt, but they're not going to play enough games, so that does hurt their case. It's a lot tighter now than it was certainly a couple of months ago, and that's with a real shake-up of fixturing at the moment. Again, there's a lot of conversation around the MVP right now. I feel I've been pretty consistent with the way I've presented my argument for the last few years, and that's going to be no different in this video either. So let's get into it. Let's get into my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season. As always, we go over the qualifications. The NBA themselves have set the 65-game pace, so that's always something I'm abiding by. Personally, used to keep that at 70, and I feel 70 really should have been the go. Of course, it was the Joel Embiid situation that completely changed the outlook of how the MVP and the awards are voted on, and it all came down to the fact that superstars tended not to play as many games and preserve the point. The media didn't like that, so they kicked up a storm and got to the point that we are at now. They very simply could have held them to the standard that had always been held, in that, you know, your best ability is availability, but they chose not to do it because talking heads need talking points on television shows. But nonetheless, we're at the 65-game pace, and I've always been pretty consistent with these other three. You need to be leading your team to wins, i.e. when your team's winning, are you the best player in those wins? Are you the factor and the deciding factor in that game? Ideally, no trade talks. Of course, that can't happen from here. But if a player has been traded, they're not going to be eligible, despite not playing, whether they've played enough games or not. A James Harden would be the perfect example for me of that this year. Even if he did have the games, I would have to disqualify him based on the fact that he has been traded. And playoff hopes, they're very crucial right now. There's going to be some guys that are making a few moves towards All-NBA selection, depending on what their team's doing. But as far as playoff hopes are concerned, that's where my MVP conversation really comes in. And that's something that I had a few years ago now, where I had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic clearly as, you know, two of the five best players as far as responsible wins in a season, but their teams didn't make the postseason. So to try and justify them being in the MVP conversation was difficult, comparative to someone who has a really good year in a bad team and is still able to make the All-NBA team. So pretty consistent across the board there. 65-game pace as deemed by the league. Leading your team to wins, having not been traded or a part of trade talks, and that's pretty much a factor I don't need to worry about now, as well as playoff hopes for your team. So now that we've got that, one thing that I will mention is that there are no honourable mentions in my countdown here in February, for the simple fact that I have a clear-cut, in my opinion, top 10 of where the MVP race sits right now. When things are sort of a bit tough, you know, I usually try and decipher a couple of factors to determine who the honourable mentions are, but for me it's really clear-cut as to who my top 10 are. And I'll even preface it with the fact that you need to have been responsible for a minimum of 18 wins as the best player at this point, such as how tight the race is. So let's get into it. Let's get into the MVP race, and we'll head on over to number 10. We begin the countdown at number 10. As I mentioned, there was never going to be a honourable mention because everyone in this list has 18 games or more, and there's no one under it that really fits the bill with honourable mentions. At number 10, I have Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who continues to be the bright spark, offensively at least, for the Timberwolves this year. 29.6 points, 5.2 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.8 blocks per game, to go with 2.8 turnovers, shooting 49.3% from the field, 39.9% from deep. He's turned into a pretty reliable sort of shooter over the last couple of years, which has been really handy from deep, and 78.9% from the free throw line. He has played in 50 games, averaged 35.6 minutes in those contests, a record of 31 and 19 in those games, and I have him responsible for 18 wins, or the leader of 18 wins for his team. Now, there's been some questions floating around for Minnesota as to how they look defensively and whether that's something they need to be concerned about. I think it is something to keep in the back of the mind, but considering how well they have been led offensively, particularly by Edwards this year, I don't think it's necessarily the concern that they should have. Edwards is third in the league in scoring, so that does alleviate a lot of pressure on that offensive end. But Minnesota as well have still remained a top 10 defensive team. And while I don't think Edwards is as great of a defender as people say he is, he still consistently gives effort. Now, when you factor that into both sides of the floor and the energy that he does bring, it's a reason why Minnesota can't be disregarded, so to speak, in the West. You know, back-to-back Western Conference Finals runs, a lot of it off the back of the big plays that Anthony Edwards makes, is something that has to be considered. And when you look at the prime run right now that Minnesota are looking to have heading into the postseason, a lot of that is going to be off the back of the play of Anthony Edwards. Now, there are a few things you would like to see a bit more distribution of the ball. They do have some very capable offensive players in that team. I think if he locked up a little more defensively, you'd see that general branding that Minnesota have had over the last couple of years as far as being a good defensive unit. Gobert is by no means a scrub, but he certainly is not the defender that he used to be. Someone like a McDaniels is stepping up, but Gilgeous-Alexander Walker being out of this team left a pretty big gap defensively, and I mean they have dropped a little bit, but that's something that Edwards could look to obtain himself and look to improve on. As I said, third in scoring. He has Minnesota sitting fifth in the Western Conference. At number 10 in my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Coming in at number 9 is one of the most statistically prolific players in the league once again this year. He leads the league in scoring and he sits third in assists per game. At number 9, I have Luka Doncic of the Los Angeles Lakers. And statistically, I mean, outward looking, Luka's case certainly stacks up. 32.6 points, 7.7 rebounds, 8.6 assists. That's right, a rounded 33, 8 and 9. 1.4 steals, 0.5 blocks on 4 turnovers. Shooting 47.1% from the field, 35.8% from deep, and 77.5 from the free throw line. In 47 games played, he's averaging 35.5 minutes, has the Lakers at 29 and 18 in games that he has played in, and he is responsible for 19 wins. Now, there are a couple of things, obviously, when it pertains to Luka. Number one, he has got the Lakers sitting in the top 6. Currently, they are sitting 6th in the West. But there are a few other things that come with this as well. Number one comes down to an efficiency argument. No one is going to debate the fact that Luka Doncic can score the basketball and can play, you know, the three dynamic areas generally the players are graded by in the year 25-26, being points, rebounds, and assists. There's no doubt that he stuffs the box score in that standpoint. Again, leading the league in scoring, top 3 in assists. But when you come down to the efficiency of it, 4 turnovers a game, he is a high volume percentage guy, so I understand that. But comparatively, he's shooting almost 8 percentage points worse than a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's shooting almost 12 percentage points worse from the free throw line than a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And comparatively, even to someone like an Anthony Edwards, he's almost 4 points, or well and truly 4 percentage points below at the three-point line. Now, when you look at the prolific amount of shots that Luka takes, you would expect a higher efficiency in all 3 categories, particularly from the free throw line. Considering at one point he was leading the league in free throw attempts. Now, that's not to say that what he doesn't do isn't conducive to winning basketball. I mean, a 29 and 18 record in games you've played is pretty conducive to winning in my book. And we've seen the guy at a younger age lead teams to the NBA Finals and lead teams to a conference final. But when you factor in his defense hasn't quite been there. Over the last month, it's been really prolific as far as he's complaining to the referees. And again, back to the efficiency argument, there's a reason the Lakers aren't always performing at their best, and I think LeBron James is a factor in that, but I also think the fact of where Luka sits in his efficiency and his performances becomes crucial in that as well. But nonetheless, still think he's been a top 10 player this year, and that's why I've got him at number 9 in my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, Luka Doncic of the Los Angeles Lakers. Coming in at number 8 is a guy that has been really high up as far as who is in consideration for MVP over the last, pretty much the last half decade and a bit. The player of the 2020 so far, and he's still well in contention. Games played is going to be the ultimate consequence for this guy if anything does happen. But at number 8, I have Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. Now, a lot of people have him higher, but again, I've got to factor in guys that have been here that are consistently contributing to wins. And that's not to say that Jokic hasn't, because he certainly has in the games that he's played and the games that his team has won. But he has been out, he has missed time. You do have to factor that in ultimately. Again, I've got nothing but respect for the game that he's had and the games he's had this season and the production that he's produced. He has turned himself into one of, at worst, the 20 greatest players that the league has seen. But I do have to be fair in my judgment of how it's been this year. He has missed some time compared to other players, which is why I have him at number 8. But he is still dominating the league. 28.7 points, 12.6 rebounds, 10.5 assists, 1.4 steals and 0.7 blocks on 3.5 turnovers. 57% from the field, 40.4 from deep, and 82.7 from the free throw line. At one point there was in the 60-40 club and was going to be by himself as far as 60-40 splits on 30 a game. And of course that production has dropped as the year has gone on. Again, he has only played in 44 games, but 34.5 minutes, 27 and 17 record in those games, and I've got him responsible for 19 of those 27 wins in the games that he's played. Jokic on the season is still sitting top 10 in scoring. He is 6th overall, and he is the league leader in rebounds per game and assists per game, so the production is still there. I've mentioned this in a couple of my review videos, and it's something that I probably do stick pretty fat with. I think that Jokic has been the best defender for Denver this year, but I do question whether they're going to win a title with Jokic being the best defender. It's not to say that he's not a great defender. I think he's very passable as a defender, and from a cumulative numbers standpoint, has racked up as many stocks as any player in the league in the last few years. Of course, Victor Wembanyama is going to have a huge say on that as the years go on, but Jokic is clearly the leader and the driver and the engine of the car that is the Denver Nuggets. Has fallen away a little bit in the last couple of weeks. I don't know anyone that's going to dispute that, but he is still there. He is still producing. He can only afford to miss one more game. He has missed 16. He can get away with missing 17 total. So he has one more up his sleeve. Whether he's going to have that durability at the moment, I don't know, particularly with the injury and, of course, the concern with the bump that he had with Lou Dort against the Thunder. But there's no doubt about it. His production's still there. His impact is still there. The thing that hampers him is the fact that he has missed time. But he's still well and truly in the conversation. And at number 8, for my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, I have Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. Coming in at number 7 is another guy that has missed time, a guy that will be pushed as far as games available and his contendership, not only for the MVP award, but also beyond in other individual awards. At number 7, I have Victor Wembanyama of the San Antonio Spurs. He has the Spurs sitting 2nd in the West. Has done a lot of work to actually get them over Denver, who themselves have fallen down to 4th. Houston are making a bit of a run there, but Wemby has just been huge, and he's huge on both ends of the floor, and the fact that he has taken a reduced minutes role since coming back from his injury, even to the point where he was coming off the bench, just speaks volumes of the production that this guy has. Again, the health card is the only question that remains around Victor Wembanyama, because he clearly can get the job done, and he can do it to a high clip. And that's exactly what he's been doing this year. Again, he has only played the one more game than Jokic, but he does have them in a higher contendership, and he does do it on both ends of the floor, things that I highly value. This year, Wemby, 23.7 points, 11.2 rebounds, 2.9 assists, 1 steal, and 2.8 blocks on 2.5 turnovers. He's shooting 50.1 from the field, 34.7 from deep, phenomenal at 7'5", and 81.5 from the free throw line. He has a very consistent shooting stroke. 45 games played, 29 minutes a game. Again, he's playing under 30 minutes to do all of this. 33-12 record. And I have him responsible for 19 wins in those games. Wemby is just a flat-out young stud. He's a superstar, and he's having a major impact on a team that has a winning record against the reigning champions. And if there's one thing that is going to be in their arsenal, it's the fact that they are very well going to be in contendership in a 7-game series. And they are so rounded that it wouldn't shock me if they took out the winner of the East either. If there's a team that I was going to back in for a championship, it would be the Spurs, behind obviously Oklahoma City. And a big part of that does come down to the fact that Victor Wembanyama has such a dynamic and just has the ability to outmatch anyone in the league. It's ridiculous. Now, of course, I think a matchup between him and Nikola Jokic becomes very exciting as well. And teams have found a way to guard Victor. It's a really strange concept that they've come up with, but I just feel the impact that he's had this year. He's leading the league in blocks, not only per game, but total. So even though he's missed time, he still has more total blocks than anyone else. For me, he's clearly the defensive player of the year. He just needs to stay healthy to get that consistency, and ultimately that health and that consistency will improve his offensive game and make the Spurs stronger, which says a lot because he already has them sitting as the second seed and one of the Smokies for the championship. The league leader in blocks, he's getting it done, and he's fifth in rebounding as well. At number 7 in my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, Victor Wembanyama of the San Antonio Spurs. Coming in at number 6 is a guy who has been consistent all year and has had a bit of spotlight taken off him due to the health of another star on his team and the suspension of another. That's Tyrese Maxey of the Philadelphia 76ers, who I have at number 6 in my MVP race to the end of February. Maxey getting it done on both sides of the ball, getting it done efficiently, carrying the workload, and proving to be one of the, if not the toughest guard matchups for anybody in the league this year. 29.1 points, 4.1 rebounds, 6.8 assists, a league-leading 2.1 steals, and 0.8 blocks per game on 2.5 turnovers, 46.5 from the field, 37.6 from deep, 89.2 from the free throw line. He has Philadelphia, ironically, sitting in 6th position in the East, and that's been pretty consistent with an inconsistent lineup this year. 57 games played, 38.4 minutes in those games, a 32-25 record, and I have him responsible for 23 wins in those contests. I've said it once, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The ability for Maxey to get up and down the floor at the pace that he plays is just phenomenal. Adding the fact that he is the league leader in minutes now, I know it's not a high rank, it's not in the 40-minute per game, which we've seen historically be the lead, but I mean 38-39 minutes a night now is league leading for most players. When you consider the pace of play, the possessions of play, the ability to get it done on both ends of the floor, because not only does he have steals numbers, but he has consistently been one of the best defenders for Philadelphia this year. He is shouldering a hell of a load, and it doesn't really get spoken about because Philadelphia still hang on to this idea that if Joel Embiid is healthy, if Paul George is healthy, hey, can we get these guys to blend? It really seems to overshadow the contributions of a Maxey. Again, great downhill runner. He's not afraid to put shots up. He does convert those shots, and that's whether it's from the floor, from the stripe, or from beyond the arc. So the level of consistency in his offensive game is there. It just makes you wonder whether he does need a running buddy that's going to be able to run as fast as him and keep that up, because you need to have that energy. And I just wonder, does he potentially waste what he's doing with a guy like an Embiid, who, don't get me wrong, has produced really, really well when he's been available on the floor, but you've got to keep up that intensity in the postseason. We know Embiid hasn't necessarily maintained his health, and we definitely know that he hasn't produced in the postseason throughout his career. So for me, Maxey has been great in this regular season. We'll see whether it transfers into the postseason, but 29 a game, leading the league in steals, leading the league in minutes. And when I talk about his scoring there, I mean he's top 5 in scoring, he's leading the league in steals, he's leading the league in minutes. Huge production from number 6 in my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, Tyrese Maxey of the Philadelphia 76ers. Moving to the top 5 now, and you're seeing a pretty consistent cascading of wins with these players here. And that has helped narrow a lot of things in the argument. It has made things stand out a lot clearer for me, but it has narrowed a few arguments as well. At number 5, a guy who has been threatening the top 3 for some time. I just feel the Knicks have slipped a little bit. And I mean, that's not a personal penalty to him, but it does factor in some of my decision making. At number 5, I have Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks. He's had another standout season. 26.7 points, 3.4 rebounds, 6.1 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.1 blocks, on 2.3 turnovers, 47.1 from the field, 37.6 from deep, and 84.2 from the free throw line. 55 games played for Brunson, 34.6 minutes. 37 and 18 record under him, which has been really, really nice. So, you know, keeping that 40 and 20 rule alive when he has been there. And I've got him responsible for 24 wins from a league-wide statistic standpoint. He does round out the top 10 in scoring, but for an inconsistent team this year, Brunson has been the most consistent player, and it's clear that he's the standard bearer. I mentioned this during the week on Twitter. I don't know whether a team rides the form and rides the momentum of one player more in this league than the Knicks do with Jalen Brunson. When Jalen Brunson has a bad week, the Knicks have a bad week. When Jalen Brunson has a great week, the Knicks have a great week and look like one of, if not the best teams in basketball. Now, many people would say I've just defined a conversation around what value is, what makes someone the most valuable player, and indeed, did I just outline Jalen Brunson as the most valuable player in the league? I mean, I understand your argument. I get it. To me, it wouldn't, based on the fact that I do come down to individual performance data when I converse on this. But if that's your argument, it's very hard for you to go past Jalen Brunson in that sense. I mean, to give you an idea, there's no one in my top 10 that's missing the postseason. There's no one I'm excluding due to games. I would have no issues with Jalen Brunson being All-NBA first team this year. That's the level of play that he's been to. And because of how the league is designed now, you don't need to have a centre in your All-NBA first team. It is something that will happen because people will forever look at that. But if you wanted to make the argument on a pure player-by-player basis, Jalen Brunson has been a top 5 player in the NBA this year, and his fortune favouring the brave attitude and the momentum that it carries with it makes a case for him actually being the most valuable player in this league, which is a sensational thing. We'll see whether he can maintain it and whether that impacts the playoff hopes and aspirations of the Knicks. But Brunson is having a massive year. That's why I've got him at number 5 in my MVP race to the end of February, the 25-26 NBA season. We move to number 4, and we move to a guy that has assumed the mantle as the best player for his team after many people wondered whether he'd be able to do it, despite the fact that he has shown that he's been able to do it in the past, and he has handled it very, very well. Now, the Knicks sitting in 3rd in the East is one thing, but this guy right here has Boston sitting 2nd in the Eastern Conference. He has had a massive run. Jaylen Brown at number 4 in my MVP race to the end of February for 25-26. Brown on the year, 29.1 points, 7.1 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 1 steal, 0.5 blocks on 3.6 turnovers, 48.1 from the field, 34.9 from deep, 77.4 from the free throw line. He's played in 53 games, averaged 34.2 minutes in those games. Boston, 34-19 under his leadership in the games that he's played. And I've got him responsible for 25 wins on the year. He has had a massive run, and I've spoken about this before. It's something that just seems to get washed over all the time because Jason Tatum has been on a consistent run to the point of, well, you can make a case Jason Tatum's the best Celtic that they've had since Larry Bird, which is, you know, a 2-generational sort of gap. That's the kind of player that Tatum has been. But Jaylen Brown has been as handy a sidekick as Kevin McHale was for Larry Bird. That's not to say that I think Jaylen Brown is a better player than Kevin McHale. In no way am I saying that. But Jaylen Brown won a Finals MVP. Jaylen Brown, although I don't really consider it, won a Conference Finals MVP. And I have had plenty of seasons and conversations where Jaylen Brown has consistently been, for me, among the 10 best players in the league, and certainly at times outplayed Jason Tatum. So for everyone to go, geez, can you believe the Celtics are playing this well? Well, when you look at the pieces that they've put around Jaylen Brown to really perform this year, when you look at the trades that they've made, and you look at the performance that he's delivered, it's very hard to deny the impact that he's had this year. Again, 29.1 points for Brown. That's good enough to have him top 5 in scoring. He's sitting in 4th. Around at 29-7 and 5. Anywhere historically, that's really good. Now, you'd like to see his free throw numbers up. I think 80% is a pass mark anywhere in the league. 34.9 from deep. I'd like to see that rise. But overall, I can't fault the guy's leadership. He's had a few moving parts this year. He's had a lot of consistency. And it's to the point where the conversation is around, will Tatum return? And if he returns, can they make an unlikely run out of the East? That's pretty good leadership. That's putting your team in really good stead. That's a huge accomplishment. And that's a big reason he's at number 4 in my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. We now move to the podium, and this guy started to get a lot more love because his team started to hit a little bit more form. There have been some injury concerns, there have been a few changes in personnel, and there has been some credit that has now been thrown to the team, not necessarily to him, but you have to consider where the Cleveland Cavaliers have been this year, where they're sitting now, and who the most constant and consistent player has been. And to me, he stands out like a proverbial. At number 3, I have Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And Mitchell having another outstanding season. Again, a guy that has had no love for most of his career. Has always seemed to be a second fiddle playing in a second-tier team. But his year this year has been as good as anything that he's ever had. The production that he's providing, the impact that he's having, the conduciveness to a winning team environment to the point where he's actually attracted someone there in free agency. Well, not free agency, but over the trade period. Is remarkable, and I think that really needs to be a credit to the point where we're actually having a conversation around trying to build the Cleveland Cavaliers for one more run around LeBron James to win a title. That doesn't happen if Donovan Mitchell doesn't make them relevant, and he's been doing that this year, and he has for a number of years, but certainly has this year. 28.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 1.6 steals on 0.3 blocks with 3.1 turnovers, 43.8 from the field, 36.9 from deep, 85.2 from the free throw line. He's played 55 games and averaged 33.5 minutes in those games. 55-20 record, and I've got him responsible for 26 wins. He is having a monster season, and he has chopped and changed a lot for me, between anywhere from as high as second in the MVP race to 5th or 6th in the MVP race, and a lot of it does come down to the form of your team and the fortunes, favouring the brave on that standpoint. But Donovan Mitchell has had as good a season as a shooting guard not named Gilgeous-Alexander this year. I've got no qualms in saying that. Just the impact that he has offensively, the load that he's had to carry, the consistency, and he doesn't come out to the media and say that he's the MVP. He doesn't come out to the media and tell them how good he is. He just goes about it. He's always done it. He's let the media do their own talking, and I think the conversations have been, incorrect that the media have held with Donovan Mitchell. I think his production has spoken for itself. Evan Mobley has certainly lifted. He's had some really good bench players. He had some good defense there again. James Harden joining the team. Jarrett Allen lifting in recent weeks, and they get all the credit, but there's nothing said about Donovan Mitchell, who has just been so consistent this year. Mitchell, again, Cleveland are 4th in the East. He's top 10 in scoring and steals, sitting at 7th apiece. And his overall impact has just been phenomenal. I can't speak more highly of it. To me, he's an All-NBA first-teamer, and he's number 3 in my MVP race to the end of February for 25-26, Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Coming in at number 2 is the leader of the best record in basketball right now, and that is Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons, who has really asserted himself now in the MVP conversation based on the fortunes of his team. Now, it is interesting that the conversation around Cade being an MVP was not there until they had a better or equal record to the Thunder, despite the fact that his production has suggested consistently he has been no worse than the 3rd best player in the league this year. And that was including when Nikola Jokic was healthy. That's a factor that people seem to ignore because the numbers aren't as flashy, the play isn't as flashy, playing in Detroit. There are a lot of things that go against Cade. If Cade Cunningham was doing this in Los Angeles right now, no one would do anything but praise his stats. If he did this in Boston, no one would do anything but praise his stats. Unfortunately, Cade is a victim of the market that he plays in, but that shouldn't be a mark against a guy who, to me, has to be in the All-NBA first team at worst, and will, in my opinion, should be coming second in the MVP race. Now, it's probably not going to happen, but that's just the kind of year that he has had. Statistically, 25.4 points, 5.8 rebounds, 9.8 assists, 1.5 steals, and a block a game on 3.7 turnovers. 46.1 from the field, 33.6 from deep, 80.9 from the free throw line. Some of those inefficiencies are the things that still get me. Cade has had a number of high turnover games. He has had a high number of high volume scoring games where the efficiency hasn't necessarily been there. But you can't fault the production when the results are right there. This is a guy who 2 years ago was leading one of the worst teams that has ever stepped foot on an NBA floor, at least in modern times, let alone all time. And he has turned them around to the best team in basketball in 2 years. Great coach with Bickerstaff, managed to load some teammates up, there's no doubt about that. Jalen Duren becomes an all-star. They trade off Jaden Ivey, but you've got, plenty of players around him that are stepping up into different positions. But he has been the consistent player and the factor for it. 52 games played, 35 minutes a game, a 39-13 record on his proviso, again, well and truly ahead of the 40-20 rule. And I've got him responsible for 27 wins. He's second in the league in assists. He's tied 8th in steals. there's not much more that this guy could do beyond be a 30-point per game scorer and a 10-assist guy. If Cade was 30 and 10 with those rebounds, the statistical argument for anyone else goes out the window. But unfortunately, when you factor that in, you factor in his market and the fact that it's taken so long to get there in the media narrative, he doesn't get spoken about enough. But for me, he's been at worst a top 3 player, and for me, he currently sits second in the MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season. Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons. And still maintaining his lead, albeit a lot slender, and a gap that I didn't think could be closed. The door has opened up a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a slam shut case, but I would think he's still got a chock in the door. It's not open wide enough for anyone to run through. At number 1, I have Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder, still remaining as my MVP to the end of February for 25-26. It comes down to efficiency. It comes down to production. It also comes down to the fact that if he's not there, despite the depth that this team has, particularly on both sides of the ball, let alone players who can just step up and play a role, I don't even think it's close still as to who the MVP is. Now, it is only a 4-game lead, 27-31 as far as wins contributed to, and they do have the second best record in the league. They sit number 1 in the West. To me, you still can't go past a guy who is doing what he's doing from an efficiency standpoint and impacting on both sides of the ball. Shea this year, 31.9 points, 4.4 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.8 blocks on 2 turnovers. 32, 4, and 7 on 2 turnovers a game. Games are about the only thing that are going to cost Shea here if he remains injured. Factoring in also to that 2 turnovers a game, he's shooting 55% from the field as a 2-guard. He shoots 38.5 from deep, which is as efficient as any high-volume scorer in the league, and 89.2 from the free throw line when he gets there, despite the fact people criticise it. If you can get to a spot and shoot essentially 9 out of 10, why wouldn't you take the efficient option? Now, I'm not excusing some of the fouls, some of the calls, because the rules are there. You know, there are some parts of that game that aren't conducive. But the guy dominates from all 3 key areas of the floor, whether it's at the hoop, beyond the arc, in the mid-range. Of course, he gets to the free throw line. He does it efficiently, and he leads a team on both sides of the floor. He's capable of being the captain of the defensive unit. He's able to be the captain of the offensive unit, the starting lineup, the second unit, you name it, he's there. His value is evidently there. And the thing that also helps his case is that he's the reigning MVP on the second best team in basketball, which has consistently been the number 1 team in basketball, and the championship favourite. Of course, the only concern I have for them, of course, is the fact that the Spurs hold a regular season record against them, and that they may be the factor in the playoffs. But Shea's played 50 games. He's averaged 33.3 minutes, 39-11 record when he's there, 31 wins. My MVP leader to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, also second in scoring for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That is my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season. Again, 65 games played, playoff hopes, leading your teams to wins, haven't been traded, and at this point for some people are going to play at least 65 games or remain at a 65-game pace. No honourable mentions as stated, but let's go through the top 10 once again. At number 10, I have Anthony Edwards with 18 wins. His team is 5th in the West and he's 3rd in the league in scoring. At number 9, I have Luka Doncic of the Los Angeles Lakers. I have him at 19 wins. His team is 6th in the West. He is the league leader in scoring and he is 3rd in assists. At number 8, I have Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. I've got him for 19 wins. His team is 4th in the West. He's 6th in scoring and leads the league in both rebounds and assists. At number 7, I have Victor Wembanyama of the San Antonio Spurs. I've got him for 19 wins. His team is 2nd in the West. He is 5th in rebounding and the league leader in blocks. Coming in at number 6, I have Tyrese Maxey of the Philadelphia 76ers. I have him credited with 23 wins. His team is 6th in the East. He sits 5th in scoring and leads the league in steals. At number 5, I have Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks. I have him for 24 wins. His team is 3rd in the East and he is 10th in scoring. At number 4, I have Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. I have him credited with 25 wins. His team is second in the East, and he is fourth in the league in scoring. Coming in on the podium at third position is Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I have him credited with 26 wins. His team is fourth in the East, and he is seventh in both scoring and steals across the league. My runner-up MVP at this stage is Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons. I have him credited with 27 wins. His team is the best in basketball and indeed first in the Eastern Conference. He is second in the league in assists and tied for 8th in steals. And leading my MVP race to the end of February for the 25-26 NBA season, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I have him credited with 31 wins. He's leading the Thunder as the number 1 team in the Western Conference, and he is second in the league in scoring. Who do you have as the MVP? How do you see the race this far into the season? Let me know in the comments below. Hit a like, hit a subscribe, share the content. I want to get this out as far as I can. Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.